Famed NBA trainer Chris Brickley has broken his silence about Caitlin Clark and potentially working with her to make a healthy recovery for the 2026 season.
A shockwave just hit the WNBA, and this time it's not about a controversial call or a highlight reel. It's about institutional control. Reports allege the Indiana Fever intentionally blocked elite NBA trainer Chris Brickley from helping Caitlin Clark recover during the 2025 offseason, the same Chris Brickley trusted by LeBron James and Kevin Durant. Fans are furious. Insiders are whispering, and the question now is simple. Why would any team stop their superstar from getting elite help? What the Fever did next shocked the entire league.
Chris Brickley is a phenomenal trainer. Now, some of you guys might not know this. Chris Brickley is up there as well. And I got to show some love to him. But Chris Brickley is up there. If we're talking like trainers, we're talking getting players ready. Chris Brickley worked with LeBron James, Kevin Durant. The list goes on and on and on.
The story ignited from a single, unassuming spark during Chris Brickley's appearance on a small basketball podcast. He was relaxed, sharing anecdotes with the hosts about training sessions with NBA legends. Then, almost as an aside, he mentioned Caitlin. He revealed that their planned offseason work together was abruptly vetoed because the Indiana Fever simply would not allow it.
So Caitlin Clark finished her rookie season. We've been talking for a few years, and
you worked with Caitlin Clark?
So we were going to work last summer, but I was gonna have to go to Indianapolis. And I respect it. Like when you're young on your team, you work out at your practice facility.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping now this season, this off season,
I love it.
I'm hoping that she'll come to New York and we'll get some work. And she's the reason why the WNBA has become so big. I would love to work with her.
Yeah.
An amazing talent.
She's
changed the game.
That single phrase, "I was supposed to go to Indianapolis, but it wasn't allowed," detonated across social media. Fans clipped the moment, amplifying it on X, TikTok, and Reddit, and within hours, the leak had morphed into a full-blown firestorm. The public was stunned by the revelation. Why would the Fever block a player, the very athlete who single-handedly carried their franchise from irrelevance to record-breaking viewership, from training with one of the best in the business?
I'm talking about multiple NBA champions this young man has been featured with, worked with, and for Caitlin Clark to potentially be on his list, somebody he's eager to work with, Caitlin Clark need to quick, fast, swiftly start working with him, because we know there's a lot of things to Caitlin Clark game that she could work on.
While Brickley's tone was diplomatic, it was laced with a veiled frustration. He paid lip service to respecting team rules, but the subtext of his words pointed to a far more troubling issue: control, ego, and internal politics festering within the Fever organization. The clear implication was that this wasn't a simple scheduling conflict. It was a deliberate, strategic decision. As the clip was dissected online, two competing narratives emerged. One, that the Fever sought to control every facet of Caitlin's recovery, walling her off from outside influence. The other, that the coaching staff feared losing credit for her progress. This sparked the inevitable, damning comparison. NBA superstars like LeBron, KD, and Melo have absolute autonomy to train with whomever they choose. So why was Caitlin, the WNBA's undisputed biggest draw, being subjected to such rigid restrictions?
If she could somehow work with Chris, he can come up with a system to help her either get out of these tough situations that she be in, especially in certain traps, and then turn around and once again adjust, either shoot off the dribble, something to help her get out of these situations with the physicality of the league. That'd be dope.
The story ignited from a single quiet spark, almost unnoticed, during Chris Brickley's appearance on a small basketball podcast. He was relaxed, sharing stories with the hosts, recounting his training sessions with NBA legends. Then, casually, he mentioned Caitlin Clark. He revealed that he and Caitlin had planned to work together during the offseason, but the arrangement collapsed because the Indiana Fever did not allow it. That single line, "I was supposed to go to Indianapolis, but it wasn't allowed," sent a shockwave across social media. Fans clipped the moment, shared it on X, TikTok, and Reddit, and within hours, the leak became a firestorm. People were incredulous at what they were hearing. Why would the Fever stop a player who just carried their franchise from irrelevance to record-breaking viewership from training with one of the best in the business? Brickley's tone wasn't bitter, but it betrayed a clear frustration. He spoke about respecting team rules, yet his words hinted at a deeper issue: control, ego, and possibly internal politics inside the Fever organization. This wasn't just a scheduling conflict. It felt deliberate. As fans replayed the clip, discussions exploded online. Some speculated that the Fever wanted to control every aspect of Caitlyn's recovery to avoid outside influence. Others believed the coaching staff feared losing credit for her progress. Then came the comparisons. NBA players like LeBron, KD, and Melo had full freedom to train with anyone they wanted. So why was Caitlyn, the WNBA's biggest draw, being restricted? The leak grew bigger when Basketball Insiders confirmed that Brickley had reached out multiple times, but was told the team wanted Caitlyn to remain under internal supervision. That phrasing raised even more red flags. The phrase internal supervision didn't sound like medical care, it sounded like possession. By the end of the day, hashtags like #LetCaitlynTrain and #FreeCaitlynClark were trending. What started as a casual podcast story had turned into a full-blown scandal, and everyone wanted answers about what the Fever were hiding. To understand why fans are furious, you have to know who Chris Brickley is. In the world of basketball training, his name carries weight. He's not just another skills coach from social media. He's the man NBA superstars trust with their bodies, careers, and reputations. LeBron James, Kevin Durant, Carmelo Anthony, Donovan Mitchell, the list goes on. Brickley built his empire by turning elite athletes into legends, refining their strength, speed, and mental endurance with methods most teams can't replicate. When players work with him, it's not just about drills, it's about transformation. So when Brickley revealed he was eager to work with Caitlyn Clark, it sounded like a dream pairing, a generational talent meeting one of the greatest trainers alive. Fans immediately imagined Caitlyn perfecting her footwork, learning NBA-level movement, and building a frame that could finally withstand the brutal physicality of the WNBA. After all, the constant targeting, the hard screens, and the relentless double teams had taken their toll on her body. Brickley could have helped her evolve, not just recover, but that dream was shut down by the Fever's management, and that's where things started to smell rotten. Instead of celebrating the opportunity, the organization reportedly stepped in and restricted it. Their justification: they wanted her to train under team supervision. To most fans, that felt like a weak excuse. The Fever's internal staff, while experienced, had already been under scrutiny for questionable conditioning programs that many believe led to Caitlyn's lingering injuries. Refusing outside help from a proven professional didn't look protective, it looked territorial. The optics were terrible. Brickley's willingness to fly to Indianapolis, work around the team's schedule, and even adjust to their medical protocols proved this wasn't about logistics, it was about control. And in the WNBA, where players are fighting for equal treatment and autonomy, blocking Caitlyn Clark from elite training looked like a step backward, one that exposed how deep the power struggle within the Fever might really go. As more details surfaced, fans began piecing together a troubling pattern. The Indiana Fever have always kept a tight leash on Caitlyn Clark's development. From her training schedule to her medical care, everything had to go through the team's internal structure. It was sold to the public as protecting their investment, but insiders say it was much more than that. The Fever's staff reportedly limited her access to outside trainers, even those with stellar reputations, under the claim that continuity and safety were priorities. Yet the results told a different story: nagging injuries, visible fatigue, and a rookie season that looked more painful than progressive. During the 2025 season, Clark faced multiple setbacks that fans blamed on poor physical management. Reports claim she was pushed to bulk up too quickly to handle the league's physicality. The added muscle seemed to slow her down, disrupt her natural rhythm, and may have worsened her lower body strain. Still, the Fever doubled down on their methods. Their control over her recovery became so extreme that even off-season training had to be cleared by team officials. That's why Brickley's revelation hit so hard. It confirmed what many already suspected. Behind closed doors, team insiders reportedly viewed outside trainers like Brickley as potential disruptors. They didn't want him influencing Caitlyn's form, approach, or even her mindset. In other words, the Fever wanted her molded entirely by their philosophy, a system that prioritized uniformity over individuality. It wasn't just about physical recovery anymore. It was about control control over brand and image. Meanwhile, Caitlyn remains silent. She's loyal, professional, and avoids public drama. But silence does not equal consent. The absence of her voice made fans even more vocal, calling out the organization for suffocating the very player responsible for their resurgence. The controversy shifted from a training dispute to a much larger question. Was the Fever truly invested in Caitlyn's success, or only in maintaining dominance over her future? By mid-2025, the warning signs were everywhere. Caitlyn Clark, once the unstoppable force of women's basketball, started showing visible strain. Her movement seemed heavier, her explosiveness dulled, and her body language screamed fatigue. It wasn't just the natural wear of a long season. Fans could tell something deeper was wrong. Then came the reports that she had been following a new muscle-building regimen designed by the Fever staff. Instead of improving her resilience, the program allegedly made her body more vulnerable to injury. The irony was painful. The very training meant to protect her might have been breaking her down. As the season progressed, so did the frustration. Social media flooded with clips comparing her college fluidity to her sluggish professional play. Analysts questioned why her minutes weren't being managed better, and why her recovery looked rushed. Some even pointed out that she had lost her signature step-back motion, a move that once terrified defenders. The conversation shifted from, is she adapting, to is she being overworked? And that's when Chris Brickley's name resurfaced. Fans realized the Fever had denied Caitlyn access to one of the few trainers capable of reversing this decline. Brickley specializes in rebuilding players after grueling seasons, emphasizing fluidity, stability, and mental recalibration, exactly what Caitlyn needed. Instead, she was confined to a rigid system designed for short-term output, not long-term sustainability. It wasn't about her growth anymore. It was about control and optics. The team wanted her in the gym, not in the hands of someone they couldn't supervise. By the time the playoffs came around, the damage was visible. Clark played through pain, her confidence tested every night. The Fever's gamble to handle her recovery internally had clearly backfired. What was once framed as player protection had morphed into a public relations nightmare. Fans began asking the hardest question yet: was Caitlyn Clark's career longevity being sacrificed for the Fever's ego-driven need to control her every move? The moment that ignited the firestorm came from a casual podcast conversation. Chris Brickley wasn't trying to stir controversy. He was simply sharing stories from his career. But when the host asked which players he hoped to work with next, he mentioned Caitlyn Clark and dropped the line that changed everything. "We were supposed to work together last summer, but I couldn't go to Indianapolis. The team didn't allow it." The hosts laughed it off, but the internet didn't. That clip spread like wildfire, and suddenly the basketball world was dissecting every syllable of what Brickley had just said. It didn't take long for fans to start asking the real questions. Why would the Fever stop him? Was there a contractual clause that forbade outside trainers, or did someone in management make that call? Within hours, sports journalists began connecting the dots between Brickley's statement and earlier reports about the team's restrictive medical oversight. The clip's tone, respectful but disappointed, made it clear that the block wasn't mutual. Brickley wanted to help. The Fever said no. Once the clip reached basketball Twitter, it was over. Major sports pages reposted it, influencers reacted to it, and fan accounts flooded the comments with outrage. Words like sabotage, control, and mismanagement dominated the replies. Even former players joined the conversation, saying that if someone of Brickley's caliber had offered to train them, their teams would have celebrated, not interfered. The Fever's silence only made things worse. No statement, no clarification, just corporate stillness while the internet burned. Then came the investigative breakdowns. Analysts replayed Brickley's tone frame by frame, emphasizing his phrasing about team restrictions. Every major podcast and YouTube sports show covered it within 24 hours. By the next morning, #Let Caitlyn Train was trending across platforms. What began as an offhand remark turned into a massive public indictment of the Fever's handling of their franchise player. It wasn't just a leak anymore. It was evidence of a system that seemed determined to control Caitlyn Clark instead of empower her. As the outrage built online, something strange happened. Mainstream sports media barely touched the story. Networks that had spent months covering every minor Caitlyn Clark headline suddenly went silent. There were no panel debates, no investigative pieces, no deep dives into why the Fever would block one of basketball's top trainers from working with their brightest star. Fans immediately noticed the blackout. Independent creators and YouTube channels began filling the void, breaking down Brickley's quote and demanding transparency. The silence from the top only made the whole thing feel more suspicious. The WNBA's official channels didn't issue a statement either. No clarification from the league, no denial, not even a generic "we support our players' training choices." It was complete radio silence. Meanwhile, on social media, the narrative spiraled out of control. Fans started to believe the league was actively protecting the Fever. Hashtags like #ProtectCaitlin and #FreeCaitlin Clark flooded timelines. Some even tagged NBA Commissioner Adam Silver, asking him to intervene. For a league constantly promoting empowerment and transparency, the silence was deafening. Inside league circles, reports suggested growing discomfort. Several WNBA insiders allegedly warned that this situation could spiral into a public relations disaster if not addressed quickly. But instead of clearing things up, both the Fever and WNBA PR departments seemed to be waiting it out, hoping the controversy would fade. It didn't. Every hour of silence made the Fever look guiltier. Podcasts and sports personalities began drawing comparisons to past WNBA controversies, unaddressed referee bias, injury mishandling, and lack of player autonomy, connecting them all under one theme: control. When small outlets finally pushed questions toward league officials, they got the same response: no comment. That two-word reply only fueled more anger. It wasn't just about a block trainer anymore. Fans were now accusing the WNBA of enabling a culture that put power over player welfare. The silence was no longer protecting the brand. It was destroying trust, one unanswered question at a time. As the chaos intensified, attention shifted toward a bigger name: Adam Silver. Most fans forget that the NBA commissioner also plays a crucial behind-the-scenes role in the WNBA's operations. While Kathy Engelbert is the public face of the league, Silver's influence runs deep. He was the architect behind the WNBA's $2 billion media rights deal, a move that gave the NBA partial leverage over how controversies are managed. So when the Brickley situation erupted, many began to wonder, was Silver aware of what the Fever were doing, or was this another case of the league protecting itself from embarrassment? Reports began circulating that Silver had been briefed about growing tensions surrounding Caitlin Clark's management months before the leak. Allegedly, multiple agents and player representatives had voiced concerns about the Fever's restrictive training policies, particularly how they limited external trainers and physical therapists. Yet nothing changed. That silence from the top now looked intentional, a calculated move to keep things quiet until the media heat died down. But the Brickley leak threw everything off balance. It was no longer just an internal issue. It was public, emotional, and impossible to contain. The timing made it worse. The NBA was already battling its own scandals involving illegal betting, fake injuries, and player manipulation. The last thing Silver needed was another controversy spilling into the WNBA, yet the parallels were too clear to ignore: control secrecy and damage control. Fans began accusing Silver of enabling a system where both leagues prioritized reputation over transparency. The WNBA's silence, under his umbrella of influence, looked less like incompetence and more like strategy. Behind closed doors, sources claimed that league officials were scrambling to craft a unified response that wouldn't implicate anyone. But every passing day of silence only intensified suspicion. The question echoing through social media was brutal but fair: if Adam Silver can overhaul NBA ethics and hold teams accountable, why hasn't he done the same for the WNBA? By the time a week had passed since the podcast leak, the damage was irreversible. The Indiana Fever had gone from one of the league's most celebrated teams to its most questioned. Their silence wasn't seen as professionalism anymore. It looked like guilt. Fans who once proudly wore Caitlin Clark jerseys were now posting videos burning Fever merchandise, accusing the franchise of sabotaging their own star. The backlash was relentless, and it didn't stop at Indiana. The entire WNBA began to feel the ripple effects. Social media became a battlefield. Former players, journalists, and even casual fans demanded accountability. Comment sections were filled with frustration, not just toward the Fever, but toward the entire system that allowed something like this to happen. People started digging into the team's medical staff, training protocols, and history with player injuries. Old rumors about mishandled rehab programs and poor treatment resurfaced, painting a grim picture of a franchise more concerned with control than care. Every new piece of evidence made it harder for the Fever to defend themselves. Sponsors quietly began pulling back promotional posts. Major brands that once celebrated Caitlin Clark's rookie rise started distancing their logos from the controversy. Even Nike, which had heavily invested in her image, reportedly expressed private concern about how the situation could affect her brand. The WNBA's reputation, already fragile, was now under direct fire from the very fan base that had reignited it. What was supposed to be a new golden era had turned into a PR nightmare, and through it all, Caitlin Clark stayed silent. That silence became symbolic, a quiet protest that said more than any statement ever could. The public saw her restraint as professionalism, while others saw it as pain. The league's mishandling of one player had sparked a movement. Fans no longer just wanted entertainment, they wanted justice. What started with a single podcast line had become a reckoning, one that would forever change how teams treat their players and how fans hold them accountable. The Chris Brickley leak didn't just expose a team decision, it exposed an entire system built on control and silence. The Indiana Fever may have tried to protect their image, but in doing so, they shattered trust with fans and possibly with Caitlin Clark herself. What began as a quiet off-season story became a national discussion about power, player rights, and transparency in women's sports. Now the world is watching. The Fever can't hide behind policies or PR statements anymore. This controversy has already changed the WNBA, and there's no turning back.